You're very welcome back. Now, we're discussing religious iconography and asking, does it have a place in our hospitals?
Here to share their views is Michael Nugent from Atheist Ireland and Dublin priest Father Joe McDonald. Good morning to you both. Michael, I'm going to ask you the question. Does religious iconography, particularly, I suppose, Christian iconography in this country, have a place in our hospitals?
No, it doesn't. I mean, everybody is entitled to believe whatever they want to believe and to practice their religious beliefs and to have their own religious iconography if they want to bring it in with them. Mm-hmm. But the state should be protecting everybody's rights equally to freedom of conscience and belief. And that means the state should remain neutral. The state should not be promoting either religion or atheism. And I think a lot of people, because they're used to it, because they've grown up with it, are desensitised to it. But if, hypothetically, a religious person went into a state-run hospital and saw a sign on the wall saying, "There is no God," they would immediately realise that's not appropriate. That's not what a hospital is there for.
Yes.
The hospitals are there to provide healthcare for everybody, just as schools are there to provide education for everybody. And neither hospitals nor schools should be promoting either religion or atheism if they're funded by the state.
Father Joe, what's your take on that? Because I would imagine there's a lot of religious iconography in hospitals at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you think they should stay there?
I suppose, as I listen to Michael, I there's lots of me would get what Michael's saying and probably have more in common with Michael than lots of people would. And we know that from talking before. But I suppose for me, it's the practice of it. I see the practice, if I'm in hospital, and I'm in most weeks, either hospital or hospice. And you see the impact of it. I had one recently where a man was really not happy that there was a picture of the Sacred Heart in the room. Now, his thing was it was spooking him, to use his word. And we had a big long chat about it, and he was less spooked because I don't think he understood it. He was looking at it in a particular way. Anyway, but the same week I had a lady very upset because the carer had removed the little statue of Our Lady. Mm-hmm. And she was getting great comfort from that, Now, I would take the view that people, this shouldn't be in people's face, you know what I mean? But I do think we should be trying to find a way of accommodating both. That if people want to have that, not necessarily on the wall when they go in, but if they want to bring it in, if they want to have it, because what we're talking about can be dismissed as peripheral, but within the Christian world, these things are core, like a crucifix is core.
So you're saying that people should maybe bring it in as opposed to them being already in hospitals. So you kind of, in a way, agreeing with what Michael is saying?
I think, look, the reality is, I think we all know this, that we're moving towards a less religious country, and there's lots of good reasons for that, separating church and state and so on. But I suppose my question in that sort of new Ireland, which I can understand where, that, and the key word is inclusive, and, you see it in government ministers, and we're trying to promote a new modern democratic republic and less, entwined with religion. But my thing about that is, will there be a place in the new Ireland? Like, will it be okay to be a Catholic? Will it be okay to be a Christian in the new Ireland?
Michael, what do you say to that?
Well,
I mean, there is such a move towards secularisation now that when people do, I suppose, practice their religion publicly, that there is a sort of, I don't want to see that, I don't want that in my face. There is a lot of that, and people feel okay about doing it.
Of course, people should be entitled to believe whatever they want and to practice their religious beliefs. Atheist Ireland works in conjunction with the Evangelical Alliance of Ireland and the Ahmadi Muslim community of Ireland to promote an inclusive Ireland that respects everybody's right to belief, but that the state remains neutral. That's the key. It's not
because there is a weight
people.
towards Catholicism in this country in practice.
There is indeed. I mean, if you take, I'll give you just a practical example in terms of the hospitals. My late wife went into hospital with a heart attack some years ago, and she was brought into the emergency room, and within 5 minutes there was somebody coming up asking her, did she want communion? Now, an atheist would never dream of going through an emergency room telling people that there's no God. These are personal, private beliefs that should be respected. Now, if somebody asks to see a priest, or asks to see a counsellor, or asks to see a humanist or atheist person, then that's fine. But the state should not be imposing it. It should be something that people practice as their own beliefs.
is a tradition that that's just the way it's been in Ireland, and that people actually, whether they believe in God or not, maybe in that time of need, maybe like a bit of comfort.
Oh, they do, but they can have that comfort, but just the state shouldn't be providing it.
But who should ask then?
Well, the individual people, if somebody is a member of a religion, then they can ask if they're going into hospital. They can, either they or their relatives can ask for a priest to go in and visit them. That's not a problem.
Father Joe, can I ask you about women in particular in this state and how badly they've been treated because of religious views being imposed on them, their fertility being controlled, shaming, that when women go into hospital, and particularly the controversy surrounding this new maternity hospital, seeing these symbols is very triggering for them. It's very traumatic for them. And is there any move towards understanding that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just what you're saying. I was talking the other day about somebody, and I know your generation, you're too young to remember this, but my mother's generation had that awful experience of being churched. I don't know if you heard of that, you know. And the idea that you'd had to go to the priest after having the baby, you know, this is within a married context, by the way. There's no, you know...
that you were considered kind of unclean.
Yeah, almost, like a cleansing thing, to be brought back into the fold nearly and so on. So it's very historic, but what you've said, right up to the present day. And, I mean, I think that if we don't deal with things like that, Grania, you know, there's a question...
All you have to do is look at the Civita experience, you know, and you know, constitutional changes. The church and the state in this country have been inextricably linked, for good or for bad, up till now.
Well, I think some good and I think some bad. You know, I think that there are things we could outline that we did well, and I think we did very badly and have paid the price for it. But like, unless we... you know, I would be encouraged in the new Archbishop of Dublin. Like, he certainly is talking the language of reform, and you know, obviously we'll see how that, and I would be hopeful that he will. But that's one of the things. If we don't examine in detail again our relationship with women, I mean, it's the obvious one that there are others, but that's a core where if we don't get our act together and be truly sorry, but make amends and do it differently, make the changes, then we will die. And I mean, we deserve to die if we're going to continue with that old model of operating.
You've mentioned before that it's almost seen as a sin to be Catholic now. And the way things are going like that, and people are almost embarrassed to mention that they practice religion.
Yeah, I think it has swung that way. Now, I'm sure not everybody would agree with that, but like, I was in a restaurant there recently and we were in a corner. It was quiet, like I wasn't talking, and I just said, well, we say a prayer, we're going to bless the food. But one of our parties said, no, don't do that. I said, why not? She said, you're going to offend people. I said, you're going to offend people by saying a quiet prayer over food. You know, is that the stage we're at? And that's my question in it all. Anybody who knows me, like, I'd be very open to the reform, the stuff Grania's just raised, all that. But will we swing so far that you nearly will be apologising for any public...
Michael, if you saw somebody saying grace at a table in a restaurant, would you actually be offended by that?
No,
or no?
Not in the slightest. I mean, not only have I no problem with people practicing their religion, I support people's right to practice their religion. The point that I'm making and that Atheist Ireland makes is that the state should not be promoting it. And the state should not be promoting either religion, or atheism. Or atheism.
So
the state
where do we go with this then, though, Michael? Because we've seen some countries take this to quite extreme levels. And you think of France banning the hijab as well. You have... I mean, do you think that Ireland needs to just remove all religious symbolism?
No, again, it's not a case of Ireland doing anything. It's recognising the distinction between the people and the state. The people have a right to practice their religion in whatever way they want. But the state, in order to protect equally everybody's right to practice their religion or belief, the state should remain neutral. The state, to use a sporting analogy, the state should be the referee. The state shouldn't be taking sides on those issues. They've enough to be dealing with in terms of the world we're living in without trying to engage in afterlife.
What do you think about schools?
Schools, that's the absolute disgrace that even though Ireland has moved on, even though you mentioned referendums, we've had 3 referendums in a row now, marriage equality, abortion and blasphemy, where there's been a 2-to-1 majority in favour of a liberal secular approach to those issues. And yet the Catholic Church still controls 90% of our primary schools and still has the right, under exemptions in our equality laws, to discriminate on the grounds of religion. Just next week, or next month rather, the United Nations Human Rights Committee is examining Ireland on its human rights record, and Atheist Ireland has made a lengthy submission about these issues, about the need for the state to remain neutral on these issues, and schools to teach everybody equally, regardless of their religious or non-religious beliefs, and similarly with hospitals and healthcare.
Yeah, Father, just let you finish.
Well, just on schools, I mean, my background is school, and I was teaching for years before I was a priest, and I'm on several boards, and I do totally accept what you're saying, but actually I'm familiar with a bishop, particularly the previous Archbishop of Dublin, was very open to divesting schools.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as it looks. People don't necessarily want us to divest. You know, people keep saying Catholic Church is hanging on. I was involved with one school, and we consulted parents, we consulted staff. Everybody was very happy, and we were coming down to the wire. It was going to be
divested.
Divested. And in actual fact, it was the staff reacted against it because they realised their panel rights in terms of jobs were not going to be protected outside the sector.
As you said, it's not simple.
It's very, very complex. The divesting of schools is not simple.
Yeah, listen, it's a really interesting topic. Father Joe McDonald, thank you so much for coming in, and Michael Nugent from Atheist Ireland. We'd love to get your opinion at home as well. 0896 111 111. I mean, what do you make? Should religious iconography be taken out of school? Or what do you think, even when it comes to Irish schools as well? Guys, thank you so much for joining us.